To all my moms moving on, I have something amazing for you. If you're ready to move on from your engagement ring, the experts at Worthy can help you turn it into cash, fast and risk-free. Worthy does all the work, and their competitive auctions get you the best deal possible. Over 45,000 people have already moved on with Worthy. Are you ready to move on too? Visit worthy.com/moms to get an extra $100 when your jewelry sells for over $1,500. That's worthy.com/moms for a special bonus offer just for the Moms Moving On community.
I think that's like something that I was not prepared for, was the friendship aspect of divorce and what that would look like for friendships that I thought were going to be lifelong friendships.
Welcome back to another Moms Moving On Unfiltered. We are so happy with how much you've been loving this series. We love recording them, so we're back today with another great episode, aren't we, Jess?
We are. A very important topic that listeners want more information on.
Yeah, and I feel like we can both speak to this so much from a personal perspective, and maybe rant a little bit, which, could be needed. We're talking about friendships after divorce and all that comes with that. They change. That's the long and short of it, but sometimes it's for the best. And we're going to go into all of that.
Yes. I think that's like something that I was not prepared for, was the friendship aspect of divorce and what that would look like for friendships that I thought were going to be lifelong friendships.
Yeah. I mean, I think for my situation, it was a little bit different. So I got divorced while I was already living here in Florida, but I'm not originally from Florida. So I had moved here. When did I move here? I moved here in 2012. I got separated in 2017. Yeah. So I had friends here. I definitely had a little circle of like my mom friends, but these weren't like my lifers. These weren't the people that I was born and raised with and knew my whole life. So I didn't have high expectation. I didn't have any expectations, to be honest. I was so focused. It was the last in my mind. I was so focused on getting out of my marriage, setting myself up, making sure Bella and I were okay, that when friendships did start changing, it caught me off guard because I hadn't even thought about it.
No, that makes total sense.
How was it for you?
Well, so I think my situation is almost the opposite in that we were divorced in the state that I was like born and raised in. The only time I had
that's
moved
what I'm
away.
saying.
Right.
Yeah,
and then
that's why I highlighted the difference, because I knew that you have roots where you are.
Right. I think for me, it was almost the opposite too, in that my ex is not from here. So I almost struggled because the friendships that we had were very much friendships that I introduced him to husbands and boyfriends. And that was kind of his core group of male friends. We had very much mutual friends that we were spending time with. So I think I carried a little bit of guilt in that regard for my ex, that he was not only, we were no longer together, but he was losing quite a few friendships on his end as well.
This is what we call the collateral damage of divorce. And what I write about in the book is because, like, for me, I was so laser focused on the relationship ending that I couldn't see past that in the moment to see what else was going to be affected, like friendship dynamics and, who's keeping which friends and all of that. I always say is almost like the second divorce for people. And it's so hard.
I totally agree. And I also think, we had talked about, I think both of us were the first people in our friend group to get divorced. My friends at the time were the core group of friends that I had were still having babies and were still living this happy life. And I felt like at the time I was such a burden to people, and I didn't want to burden them. People didn't know how to react. And I took it as they just don't care, but they just don't know what to do.
Right. I remember that feeling too, but I've generally always carried that feeling of, thank you, childhood trauma of I'm not going to burden you with my problems because A, I don't want to feel like a burden. And I've spent my whole life fighting my own battles. So why start having people help me now? Right. And that's exactly what you and I advise against with clients, or when we speak to anyone who is going through the divorce process. You actually have to find the people to lean on. But then enters the problem of the flockers and the fleers.
Right.
Did you have an experience with that?
I had more of, and I know we've talked about this, is I had a very good group of friends who I feel like almost ghosted me in a sense. And looking back, I think there were things that we both could have done a little bit different, in that I could have reached out for them for support to let them know, hey, I need help with this. Or like we talk about with clients, inviting yourself to functions, even if your kids are going to be gone. I feel like they didn't really step up. I had one instance where a friend said that I wasn't being a good friend to her. And I was like, you have no idea what I'm going
Projection
through.
much?
Yeah. Like it was
No, I'm just kidding.
so hard. I'm sitting here and you know me, I take things personally. I always want to
Oh,
help
do
people. So
you?
I'm like, "Ugh, maybe I am a bad friend." And then I think about it and I'm like, no, I am going through hell and back right now. I had to focus on myself. I had to focus on my kids, and friendships just kind of had to take the back burner for a while. And I
Yeah.
wasn't at that time, I had to be selfish, so to speak, because I had, you know what it's like when you're going through divorce, getting through the day feels like you ran a marathon sometimes.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, I will say that for me, so I very quickly started to see who was like backing off a little bit. And at the time, you hindsight, obviously, you see things so much more clearly. But at the time, I was just offended and I
Mhm.
had resentment. So this is, for those of you who haven't read my book, I talk about the flockers and fleers. The flockers are the people who will hear about your bad news, your divorce news, and flock to you like
Mhm.
white on rice. We're going to get to that after. The fleers are the people who like, they smell a little shit and they run the other way. And it is the most hurtful thing. And what I've learned in hindsight, as I started to say, is people leave your side in hard times because of how it makes them feel, not because of how they feel about you. And it is so important to remember that your divorce reality is shining a light on something that is making them uncomfortable. And I will let you know, the friend that ditched me the fastest, that I was the most hurt by, ended up divorced a few years later. And I was like,
Mhm.
well, then I guess what they say is true.
I do have friends like that as well, that they almost look at you like you're going to be this single person now that's almost trying to go after husbands or do this. I'm like, no, I want nothing to do with anybody right now. But like you said, it's almost like you start to see that people that they may not have voiced it are having these same relationship problems, and maybe they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to admit it. But I did see quite a few friendships over the years. They, inevitably got divorced as well.
So that's what I'm saying. So your divorce reality shines a light on, holy shit, my life isn't so good right now, behind the scenes. And this could be a reality for me and it's too painful to face.
Right.
Or I don't want to get, my head more confused on my own situation and see how happy this divorced person is and then, confuse myself more. There's so many reasons for it. And yeah, then there's women who are very insecure about their
Mhm.
marriages. And you're the hot single mom and their husbands maybe don't behave and you're a threat. And to the other side of that,
Mhm.
and I see this as very much a cultural thing, and it had happened to me down here in Miami. My mom is from South America, and in the Colombian community here, divorce is like a sin, and like they look at you twice, and many people stay married to avoid the stigma here because it's a very tight knit, kind of obnoxious community. And I knew that there were some husbands who were threatened by me and didn't want their wives hanging out with me. And so, I was just that bad divorce bitch, like stay away from her.
Right.
But, at the same time, you find your people and it's all an amazing process, as is adjusting to the people who kind of like come out of the woodwork and make a home up your ass for some weird
Yes.
reason. Did this
Yep.
happen to you? Did you hear about it?
We hear about it, and it did happen to me, that the girl that you haven't talked to since high school, that you're only friends with on Facebook, that all of a sudden, people talk about it on social media. There's not many pictures with you. You change your picture of you and a family to maybe just a picture of you and the kids, and people start talking and people hear things and they send you a message like, hey, it's been so long. How are you? I'm like,
Mhm.
I have
Mhm.
literally not talked to you in 12 years. I know what you're doing, and that's
Yeah.
hard because I just push that away. I'm like, I'm going through enough. I'm not going to give this the time of day, but it's hard because then that people are just talking about you and they just want to run
Yeah.
your name through the gossip mill, and it's just not what I was about.
Yeah, for me, it was like, I want to tell when people would come with like that out of nowhere for like, how you doing? Like when they're,
Mhm.
I would give it to them straight because I'm like, I know you're going to go talk shit about me right now. I'd rather you
Right.
go with facts than make up your own story. Thank you very much. But one of the most traumatic experiences for me, I think, post-divorce and as it relates to friendship, wasn't so much who I lost, but a friend that came into my life that probably hurt me way more and did
Okay.
more damage than anyone who ever left. And my close friends, now, and my husband and everybody in my world knows how difficult this was for me, but I couldn't see at the time, which is relatable, right? Like we're all vulnerable. We're all like longing for attachment at that point in any capacity, whether it's some random new friend that shows up. And that's why I write about it, so people are aware. But I had this one person in my life who I met at the tail end of my marriage when I was the most miserable. And I felt like she was my guardian angel, like was there for everything, called me 12 times a day to make sure I was okay, wanted to see every text message, wanted to hear everything. And I
Mhm.
was like, oh my God, like I don't know how I could have gotten through this without this person. And then all of a sudden, I met my now husband. And I got like my groove back. I was like looking good, like feeling good.
Right.
And this person got meaner and nastier and more distant by the day and would make, I wrote about it in my book. You guys can read all about it. Just comments, these underhanded comments, and talk about me to other people. And came to my wedding and was like taking pictures and sending them to some group chat, talking shit about me.
Mm.
And if you would have told me in those moments that this person who flocked to me in my darkest times
Right.
would have ended up being the person who hurt me the most, I would not have believed you.
I mean, that's
I think
that's
that
so hard.
experience, that was one of the most painful adult experiences I have ever had, ever.
Yeah, I'm sorry that you had to go through that. I can't imagine. You trust this person, you let somebody into your life, like you said, when you're at your most vulnerable point. And for them to do that, I mean, it's horrible to have to experience.
I will tell you though that all these years later, I mean, I probably spent 2 years in agony over
Mhm.
it, just couldn't sleep, overthinking, didn't understand. And with all the healing and growth that I've done and all the all that I know now about people and patterns, and I have empathy. Like
Yeah.
I don't necessarily forgive, but I understand now, seeing that this is a genuinely unhappy person who has this pattern of loving friends and then hating them very quickly.
Mhm.
I get it. So I've been able to depersonalize, and that's what I think anybody in this situation needs to do. When you have somebody who either flocks or flees, you have to know how to depersonalize, or you will be fixated on all the wrong things as you go through the
Right.
divorce process.
No, I think that makes total sense. I think it's really hard to, like we talk about flockers and fleers, the people that do leave, like I still find myself questioning, what if I would have done this wrong, and what if I would have done this differently, and things like that. But I think you learn and you grow so much through this entire process that it really does help you to see who your true friends are and who you can rely on. I feel like I was lucky enough in that I went through my divorce when Holden was entering kindergarten, and I had it in my head that I would be this divorced mom and there are all these happy couples at his school and I'm going to be the one that's singled out. And it was the exact opposite. I have found some of the most amazing friends through him starting school and me just putting myself out there and owning, like, hey, I'm Holden's mom, I'm a single mom. And just having those friendships that are so real, I think is the most important thing you can do through this process.
Yeah, I will say that what left my life, who left my life in those times really allowed space for some pretty amazing people. One of my best friends, Evelyn, who everybody on social media knows as Hatch and Bloom, she was my friend before while I was married, but she got separated not long after me. And so all of a sudden we went from like being friends to being really close friends.
Yes.
And our daughters are the same age. And so we found strength in each other. And then we met like our new partners at the same time. And that was amazing. And I don't know that I would have had the same space for her had I still had all those dumb people taking up space in my life.
Right.
But that I do have, I didn't lose all my friends in divorce, just a few, but the ones that stuck through, I have to tell you, like, I always have this memory of one of my good friends who I love dearly. Her name is Shira. When Spencer and I were moving in together, our house was finally finished. It had been a year of renovations. And she came over one day to like help me with something that when I was moving in and unpacking, and she brought something over and she looked at me and she was like, I just want to cry. Like, look at this. Like, look what you've done for yourself. I met you and you were at the worst like place ever. And now look, and it's those people that mean so much. And it is so quality over quantity for me.
100%, 100%. And like you said, just to have those genuine people in your life that both of us may have a hard time giving ourselves credit for how far we've come, what we've overcome, and like our huge accomplishments, and having friends that can see that and point that out is so huge. And it just shows
huge
what is most important. And like you said, I feel like the older that people get, a lot of times the smaller their social circle gets. And I truly believe in what you said, in quality over quantity. Those few friends that you can really rely on no matter what is most important.
Yeah.
Amen.
And
I also think too, sorry, but I do think that it's helpful. Like you said, you bring up Evelyn. I love that. I mean, both of you are amazing co-parents, but I think it's also really great for children to be friends with other kids that are co-parented because they have that commonality. It's like Holden and Sawyer both have friends, and we both have healthy co-parenting relationships. We have the child first mindset, but they have that relatability to, I can't go to this play date today because I'm by my dad's, and they feel like they're more normal when they're having friendships that are like that.
I'll tell you that one of my friends who got separated, an acquaintance at the time who's now a friend, but the child was in Bella's class, and Bella came home and was like, guess what? Did you know so-and-so has a mommy's house and a daddy's house too? I was like, nah. And then I was like, and you know who else? And she was like, oh. And so what was really nice is, now that I have so many more friends who are divorced, like you, I was the first, we're all on the same schedule. So we have kids the same weekend and we're off the same weekend.
That's great.
And that's good for the kids. It's good for us. But what you bring up is amazing because it takes me to the question I wanted to ask you. Many moms do not know where to turn or who to look for when they feel so alone and don't have friends. And they want that person who's also divorced, whose kid can help validate their kid. Where do you suggest people find such people?
I mean, I feel like you and I are such open books. I've had so many people, whether it be people I went to high school with, people that I may have grown up with, moms now that when the kids started school, they've since been divorced. So I've kind of been the go-to person. And I truly it is such a great thing to have. I love that people feel that they can come to me and talk to me. But one thing that I found really helpful when I didn't have that was the moms groups that I started going to when Holden was a baby. You do start to see those people, if you're, whether it's just like a Facebook group that you're a part of, and you could, even if you're just messaging this person or texting with them, just for that, having someone that understands what you're going through and that can be there for you, I think is so valuable. For me, it took a while for me to find those people. It really did take until about halfway through Holden's kindergarten year when I was like texting with a mom from his kindergarten class, like, hey, Holden tells me that, so-and-so has two families too. Like we co-parent as well. And like you mentioned, we were on the same schedule so we could get coffee on a Saturday morning when our kids were with their dad. And it really helps to form those strong relationships because you can really understand and empathize with what they're going through.
There is no one better to understand like someone who's walking with the same path, and I've had to learn that for my non-divorced friends, my non-co-parenting friends. They don't know what they don't know. And if they've stuck around and they're there for you, maybe not in the capacity you wanted them to be because you set these expectations for them or yourself in relation to them that might have been a little unattainable. But if they have been there for you and they are, answer the phone when you need them, don't be shy to tell them what you might want from them. Like,
Yeah.
Saturday nights might be date nights for these people. If they love you and you say to them, I know it's date night. Do you care if I tag along? Because you're going to be with all of our other couple friends. They're not going to say no.
Right.
They just don't invite you because they think maybe it's weird for you. So don't be shy to like set your expectations with people or ask them to, jump in. Hey, I know you guys are going to do this barbecue. I don't
Yeah.
want you to think that like I'm going to be sitting home in bed crying, like I'm coming by. And then they
Mhm.
know that you're not, you're like a landmine when you're getting divorced. And the people who don't understand think that like any little thing is going to set you off. So you have to
Right.
prove them otherwise.
Yeah. And I think doing that even, years after divorce is important as well with friendships. I have a group text of really amazing moms that are all married. It's their first marriage, really great bunch of girlfriends. And they'll say, hey, we're going to get together for whatever holiday or like you said, a barbecue, can everybody come? And I have to say, well, the kids are by their dad, but I'm coming. Like, I don't care if my kids aren't going to be there. I want to see my girlfriends. I don't mind. And I also feel the same with holidays too. If my kids are gone on Thanksgiving and I go by my cousin's house, then I get to really kind of give her a break, spend some time with her son, but also like, I don't want to be excluded just because my kids aren't with me. So I think putting yourself out there, you might feel uncomfortable in the beginning, but you'll learn that the true friends just want you around, whether your kids are with you or whether they're by their other parents' house, they just want to spend time with you.
Amen. That is so true. Don't hesitate to put yourself out there, set your expectations. If you're upset with a friend, have a conversation with them.
Mhm.
Maybe they just don't know how to act and they're really confused. If they're just really being assholes, try to depersonalize because it may have nothing to do with you and everything to do with them. And for everything else, Jess and I are always here for you, aren't we, Jess?
We are.
We are. You guys know I'm not taking on clients right now as I'm in my um master's program, but Jess is, and
I
people
am.
love her. And,
Yes.
give her a holler, reach out, info@momsmovingon.com. Otherwise, this is a great place to wrap. Any parting words, Jess?
No, I think like we talked about just putting yourself out there. I think the biggest thing too is speaking up. If there's something that you feel like you have a friend that's not reaching out in the way that you were hoping they would, maybe just having that uncomfortable conversation versus possibly losing a friendship that could have just been talked through. That's something that I learned.
Mm.
I am used to be, I'm working on it. The person that was like, okay, they don't want to talk to me, like, fine, I won't reach out either. But sometimes it takes you kind of taking that first step to have that uncomfortable conversation and see where it goes. Cause they may not even know that you're feeling isolated or alone. And maybe you just need to sit down, talk about it and move forward.
Amen. Get comfortable being uncomfortable because that's part of this whole growth process, isn't it? In
Yes.
terms of your divorce, in terms of your friendships after divorce, in terms of everything you're going to have going on after divorce. So do that. Keep in touch, and we'll see you next time on Moms Moving On.
Bye, everyone.